Sons of the Forest has been out almost 6 weeks, and it had an absolute mammoth of a launch, with millions of copies sold in the first week alone, and all pretty much positive reviews. Over 100,000 reviews, and 84% of them are positive, which is brilliant for an early access title. Alongside that, there's continual hotfixes, along with a fortnightly update schedule. How long this will continue is yet to be seen. Hopefully it continues right the way up until the end of early access, and then there's still updates after that. These updates are brilliant, adding loads of new additions each time, the last one adding a glider, a new cave system, and some new enemies. But there's still so much that can be done to improve the game, and make this one of, if not the best survival game currently out there. If you are a fan of Sons of the Forest, please subscribe to the channel, drop a like on the video, I'd greatly appreciate it. I think one of the first things that needs a lot of work before leaving early access is the teammate AI, so that is Kelvin and Virginia. Currently they are both great assets to have, especially if you're playing solo, but when you're playing a multiplayer they don't really do too much. When you're using mods, Kelvin can become brilliant, especially if you've got 40 of him collecting you logs. It turns out to be quite fun, but I think that they need a lot more into them before we go into a main launch. Especially when it comes to Kelvin's abilities. At the moment, we can get him to fetch things, we can get him to light a fire, we can get him to carry logs. But beyond that, I think it would be great to see him actually contributing to building things. So let's say you have the blueprint menu up, for example, and you've got a blueprint for, let's say, a wall. You could have Kelvin take the logs to the area and apply them into the wall for you. Obviously, you still chop out your own windows and doors and things like that, just so it doesn't get things a little bit confused. But I think having him being able to do that would definitely help, and it would make him a great asset. I know combat-wise, he doesn't really do too much. He tends to cower in a corner quite a lot, and I think it would be cool to have him as a combat ally, but obviously we do have Virginia for that. Having him be able to do a little bit more than just set up the tarps and fish is a little bit meh. I think being able to get him to maybe cook a meal, I think would be really cool. So he obviously goes out and he gets fish already, but getting him to bring that back, place it on the fire and actually cook a meal for you and himself would be a really nice feature. And Virginia. Oh, sweet Virginia. She is, she's something special. When you need her, she's not there. When you don't need her, she's right there and follows you around and shooting everything that moves. But most of the time, she just goes off for a wander and does her own thing. You know, strong, independent woman. I'm all for that, I get it. But I think it'd be great to be able to set her radius. She is a great asset when it comes to combat and defending your base. That's if she's actually there. So being able to set her radius to your base, or say, stay here and defend perimeter, something along those lines, like the little notebook that we have for Kelvin, but being able to use that with Virginia would be really good. Not necessarily for gathering or anything like that, they're both brilliant teammates in their separate ways. Obviously, she is great when it comes to combat, so being able to utilise that a lot more, I think, would be a really good feature. Having her go out and, say, hunt something, so go and grab us some heads from cannibals, you know, go shoot them and then take the heads, I think maybe a little bit of a stretch, but it would be quite cool. Just the basics of having her defend your base and setting her to actually hold off the fort or potentially remain neutral rather than being instantly hostile, I think would be a great idea too. Now, something I don't think is exactly necessary, but it's just something that I personally would really love to see in the game, and that is a little bit more of an emphasis on the survival aspects of the food and the drink system. Obviously, we have the energy, which is really cool, I do like that, but I think something similar to the Green Hell style, where you need carbohydrates, protein, all of that kind of stuff from certain foods. Because currently, at the moment, it does make the game very easy, because you can just eat whatever the hell you want, and however much you want, it's not really that much of an issue. So I think being able to have a little bit more of detail behind that would be really cool. Maybe a sort of hardcore option, I think would be nice. But that's the same for liquids too. Obviously we can drink as much water as we want, we can neck back as many energy drinks and it doesn't really do anything. But I think like energy drinks having an adverse effect could be really cool. And potentially, obviously having to boil water, clean all your water and stuff like that. I think that just make the game that little bit harder and add a little bit more of the survival elements to it. Now let's talk about AI when it comes to cannibals. Cannibals are everywhere, and you can see some pretty cool fights. Unfortunately, you don't encounter them all that often in the open world. You know, as you're wandering around, there's not really all too much going on. You come across a few little bits here and there, but I think seeing the factions actually go against each other more frequently would be really cool. And once again, increase that harder element of it, because you've got much more factions going at each other. They're much more aggressive, and when they are attacking each other, it looks awesome. It is so cool to just stumble across. And it's a shame that we don't see it more often, especially with some of the bigger guys, like the guys with the gold masks, or the big red dudes. Seeing those guys come in and take out a bunch of the smaller cannibals is really an awesome sight. So having that as a more frequent thing would be really awesome. And potentially being able to learn a little bit more about why they're like that and why the factions are so split, I think would also be quite cool. Obviously, it's a big island. You're going to have separate factions in different areas, but they tend to be bunched up quite a lot. So why are they bunched up? Is there a reason behind it? I'd love to know. I just think a little bit more lore behind the cannibals themselves, what they're doing there, why they do things, and how leaders become leaders and things like that would be really nice. And alongside that, much more variety when it comes to the cannibal camps. They don't really have too much going on at the moment, and they are currently improving on that, with the most recent aspect being the bigger lookout tower that the cannibals have had added to their camp. But I think being able to see a bit more sort of villages and actual structures that they've sort of not so much put together, but, you know, they've inhabited areas. Like on the island, there's a few empty shacks. Seeing them utilize stuff like that with greater numbers inside, rather than the 4, 5, 6, or 7 that you'd see. Seeing like 15 to 20, an actual community, I think would be a really, really cool aspect. Because that way you could just, not just for the combat side, but being able to actually watch them and see how they interact with one another, I think is something that's really interesting about the cannibals and the enemies in the game. Just being able to view and observe what they do is really quite fun. Next up, we're going to be talking about the electrical stuff that we saw in the trailer. And these were solar panels, which you could just briefly see on the top of the house in one of the original trailers. But we haven't actually seen any of that be implemented yet. Obviously, it was switched over to early access after that trailer was launched, so there is a potential that the electricity system could have gone completely, and they just decided to stick to the original battery system that we had in the first game. But there are plenty of items in-game that use batteries. Obviously, we've got the chainsaw, there's loads of other stuff, and we can only carry 10 sets of batteries at a time. So you go through them quite quick, and they can be quite difficult to find. I know that's one of the things that I found harder to get without using mods or farming the same area over and over again. So I think having something like the generators that we see in the smaller bunkers, and potentially sort of battery chargers, would be a very, very cool thing to do. But maybe make the batteries, the rechargeable batteries, just a little bit harder to find, and then the normal batteries are there just as your standard. I think having rechargeable things like the solar panels and potentially some really good lighting inside the buildings and around your base itself would be very cool, especially when it comes to an invasion. Having like spotlights that you could either point at cannibals or potentially just floodlights all around your base would make it just look awesome, and it would be a really, really cool way to sort of fend off the attackers and see them coming at you from a bit more of a distance, because currently with the torchlight it's really difficult to see what's going on quite far out. Now next up is a few items that I'd like to see just added, which are, we've seen a few bits like it before, and one of the main ones is the log cart. Now, they weren't originally going to add it into the game, but after much pestering from the community, they have said the log cart will be coming in a later update. So, very excited for that. I can't wait to actually use the log cart. Oh, God. Damn. The log cart it just made things so much easier. And not having it, yes, we have a Kelvin, but he only carries one log at a time. We obviously only carry 2 at a time. And we do have the rope gun now, which does speed up that process a little bit. But if you're building a base on a hill and you've got multiple rope lines, as soon as that log comes off the other end of the rope and just buggers off down the hill, then, you know, you've lost your log, and it was a little bit pointless. So having a log cart just to transport things those smaller distances, but in greater numbers, I think would be a really cool aspect. Now, so far, I absolutely love the building aspects of the game, but I think having some sort of build customization would be great. So being able to put down rugs and stuff like that in your actual house. Obviously, we can add some lanterns and some little bits here and there, but some rugs, just some little plants, maybe a little pot of berries, just random little bits. Obviously, we have the shelves as well, a couple of the skull items and the bone items. But I think a little bit more than that would be great, just to make your house feel a bit more like a home. Obviously, we have a bed, which is just made up of sticks, but being able to wrap some animal hide around that, just to make it look a little bit more homely, I think would be really nice. And finally, something else that I think would definitely just make things a little bit easier, is obviously we have the prefabs. So a prefab of some form of glider launch pad would be awesome. Something with ropes and pulleys that you can actually launch your glider up, and sort of like a save system for the glider. Obviously, wherever you land with the glider, it stays there. But being able to build something that goes just maybe not massively high, but maybe double the height of the current lookout tower that we've got, and then some sort of rope systems on top that just gives you a little bit of a push off. So then you can traverse the map a little bit easier no matter where your base is set up. That way you don't need to be up high, or you don't need to have a really long drop to actually get up speed to get back up high again. Because currently the glider is really good. I really love it. It's a really fun way to get around. And if you don't know, you can get it to actually lift as well. Some people didn't know that, which obviously you just point down and then just point straight back up. So just get a little bit of speed, and then you can go back up, and you can get a decent distance with it. But just being able to launch it off of something on your base, even if you are on flat ground, I think would be a really nice feature and really helpful, especially when it comes to traversing the map. And that way you could build a big chunk of those just dotted around. So, what do you guys think? What would you like to see added to Sons of the Forest before it leaves early access? Let me know down in the comments. I would love to see people's ideas. For now though, we're going to wrap that one up there. Please subscribe to the channel, drop a like on the video, and if you want to support us a little bit further, consider becoming a member. I'll greatly appreciate it. For now though, I've been Wired, you guys have been awesome, thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.